Hi everyone, hope you're all having a great day. Today I'm going to talk about using the pastel pencils or charcoal pencils in Procreate, and I'm going to draw this scene of Whitby by night, and I'm going to talk about why it's important to use the same techniques when you're using a traditional drawing medium like charcoal. You've got to draw with it digitally the same way you would if you was doing it with traditional materials to get that sort of traditional effect. So let's get into it. So what I intend to do here is work exactly like I would with pastels, and I'm using the charcoal block pencil found in the charcoal category. And I thought it'd be fun to change the background colour, first of all, of the paper that I'm working on, or the canvas. And I wanted a kind of a cerise pinky colour I thought would be quite nice for this, because it's a night scene, and I thought that would sort of glow through. Because the idea with pastels, the first thing is you're working on a coloured paper, and you do want that to glow through. So I do not want to kind of hide everything on the coloured paper. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you're working with dry pigments, really. So it's like paint, but they're not in a medium. It's just chalk, so like dust. So if you want to blend from a light blue to a dark blue, you may have 3 or 4 blues. One charcoal block being really dark blue, then a medium blue and a light blue, and so on. So the way I'm working this drawing, as you can see, I put some dark blues on, then I've chose a lighter blue colour and sort of blended it. And there's a few ways of blending. You can sort of just lay one colour over the top of the other, which is what I'm doing here. And you can see I'm sort of changing the size of the pencil to try and vary the way that I would be drawing with that charcoal stick. So and using different size sticks, because if you're using charcoals, I should say pastels, let's call them pastels. If you're using pastels, you might have 5 or 6 different brands, and one would be a really thick pencil or stick, and then you can have a fine one. So I've sort of varied the thickness of those to sort of add variety to the shapes that I'm making. And you can see I'm sort of, I don't like to blend pastels much at all. I prefer to just sort of blur them or blend them with the strokes as the colours merge. But I do use 1 or 2 areas where I do blend it, and to do that I would set the blending tool to the pastel that I'm using. So as you can see, this is almost, it's an impressionist piece. There's no detail going into this, and it's all about the colour and the light. The subject matter in the photograph is pretty not there really. It's sort of really burnt out, and we've got this nice sky. So I'm just sort of picking out shapes rather than details. So we've got this sort of shape of the tops of all the buildings, and I've sort of sketched that in a little bit, and I'm now sort of sketching in the handrails along the harbour and putting in all of these sort of reflections and colours that I think should be in the water and in the foreground. My canvas is a little bit longer than the photograph, so I'm going to add a little bit more colour to the foreground. And you can see I'm varying the size of the strokes and the thicknesses of them, and just sort of putting in short strokes, because when you work with charcoal, or when I do it, I do tend to do sort of quick strokes like that, and not sort of scrub in or sort of shade with it or anything like that. I'm just sort of putting strokes of colour on. So that's what I'm trying to achieve. And if you look at the way the colours appear it's now getting little fine strokes, and you'll notice now I'm starting to use the blend tool, just to give the impression that there's a reflection on the water. And I've just done that by dragging the stylus down to blend one or two of those colours, getting in those lights, and everything, by the way, it's all drawn on one layer. I didn't want to get into using different layers. I wanted the colours to interact on that layer, and everything is on one layer. I didn't create any other layers at all. There we go with the blending again, just sort of dragging that colour down, just to give the indication of two boats. You'll notice in the photograph they're off on the right hand side, so I've just brought them in a little bit to add a little bit more to the composition, but I've left the three, I think it is, major boats that are right in the middle of the photograph. I've left them out completely. I didn't want them. So this is definitely a drawing that is full of colour, and you can see how that pink is really glowing through, and I've even chosen the pink as a colour from time to time just to add a few more highlights in there. Going back into the sky now, working in some more lighter colours, and it's basically, I've kind of finished the drawing almost, but I'm just adding some more colours just to lighten it up a bit. And I'm really conscious that I've got this dark area right in the foreground, which is going to need to be treated. I'm loving that really soft pink that I'm putting in now on the sky, just as the sun's setting. Really liking that. So just putting in strokes that are kind of giving you the impression of detail when there isn't any detail there at all, really. Just felt I needed to strengthen that light up a little bit. The nice thing about this is, unlike charcoal or pastels, you can just click the undo button, which is not, you can't do that with pastels at all. It's very difficult to lift out. Once you've got that mark on there, you kind of got it. Without damaging the paper, you're not going to lift it off very successfully. So putting in some more rails, just sort of where the highlights are on the top of the rail, where the street lights, I guess, and the moonlight possibly, or the sunset, is just catching the top of the rails and adding a little bit of light. I'm not putting white on there. They are sort of really pale pinks and yellows and things, just to add a little bit of colour. I don't want that sort of eye popping. And then I thought the foreground, I will just have fun with colour and put in some little strokes of colour here and there, just to give the impression that that's sort of the path is cobbled, I guess, or it could be wet. I'll leave it to your imagination. A few more highlights. I'm going to blur those in the water. Look, you can see I'm just sort of smudging them down a little bit. And I've already signed it, so I thought it was finished. And I started looking at it again. I thought, no, I think it needs just a little bit more. And I totally missed off a set of lights that I wanted to go in. So you can see this is all quick strokes. Another nice thing about this is if you have got a dark pastel on, you can then go over it with a light colour, and it still like puts the texture of the paper through. One of the problems with pastels is you can like fill up the grain with a pastel. Well, you don't. You can really get away with it digitally, because every time you put a really contrasting colour over an existing colour, you get that grain back again, which is great. It always looks really fresh. So I really like that feature. Anyway, I'm just sort of messing around with the colours and the shadows and things. So I tried a bit of green in there, which doesn't really feature anywhere in the drawing. So I went and put a little bit of teal in, which I've got in the sky. And then sort of started adding some more colour. Just darkening up that sky a little bit. And then I came back to it a second day, and I realised that I missed those lights off, and I wanted to lighten up the sky. I thought I'd made it too dark, so I went in with a bit more colour. and I felt I needed some more oranges in there just to capture that sort of sunset a little bit. So you can just keep going over it and over it with this pencil. It's really great. So a really fun pencil to use. That is the charcoal block. I mean, you could use any of them, but I like this one because it gives you that sort of square shape that you do get with pastels. I thought I'd put another light in here just so I can hang that line of white lights just off that to create that nice sort of zigzag that's going through, that pattern that's going through the painting. I felt they were all a little bit big, so I just sort of cut round them through the negative shapes, adding a little bit more colour, just some tiny little strokes in the foreground, a little bit more attention to the sky, lightening it up a bit, lightening up that beach slightly. I think that just makes it pop that little bit more. A few real highlights on that handrail, and that is pretty much going to be it, I think. So yeah, I'm just putting a few more touches in, a few darker bits, darkening up and post. That is it. So using the charcoal block in Procreate and using techniques that you would use in a traditional drawing. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, a big thumbs up is much appreciated. And if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, because I've got lots of videos like this and I want to be sharing them with you. So hopefully I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.